Hello. Today I'm going to talk about my thoughts on suffering and in relation to Gnosticism mostly. But I guess I should say this is going to be a little bit of an odd video, mainly because I hope I don't get too emotional because this is kind of a deep topic. But a person I know a few weeks ago drowned in Vietnam, and I wouldn't say that he was a close friend, but he was a friend, and it was a big surprise. Everybody was quite shocked. And when I say it was a surprise, it was a surprise and it was not a surprise because he had kind of a lot of issues, and I don't think the fact that something like this happened to him, you can just kind of tell when these kind of things are going to happen to somebody, I guess. So he drowned, and the first thing I thought about was that he has a daughter. Now, his relationship with his daughter isn't great, but the first thing that kind of popped into my mind when I heard the news was her, and sort of her, what would be her reaction. And I have to admit, it was strange because I knew this guy quite well, but thinking about her actually broke my heart more than his death, if that makes sense. In his case, if he hadn't had a daughter and he had died, I think I'd almost see it as he's finally at rest because he had kind of a turmoil in his soul, let's say. But the fact that he has a daughter, now she has to kind of carry on the suffering, in a way, the suffering that he was already carrying. So I'm going to get into that and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can keep it together. I think I'll be all right. But if you want to like and subscribe, if any of this touches you in some way, or if you have anything to add to it, you're welcome to do that in the comments. I'm not going to get into details on it as far as the experience, but yeah, we'll see where it goes. Anyway, I guess the first thing is just the idea of suffering. I mean, we're all suffering, and I think that's part of what the appeal for me of Gnosticism is, that we live in a world that's like a prison, and it is suffering, and that's what we're here to do, is to suffer. That might sound cold, but there is a great wisdom in understanding that, I think, because a lot of people hit their head against the wall, like thinking that the suffering is happening to them, and that they are kind of the like it's happening to only them. That's often how they feel. And anyone with empathy knows that that's not the case, and that we're all going through our own struggles. So I think the thing about suffering, though, is that, and this is the case in this situation, this man carried a lot of suffering with him, but now his suffering is going to be pushed onto her, and that's going to cause more suffering. And she's quite young still, she's a teenager. What will happen, how will this incident affect her life in the future? And then like, what suffering is she going to bring upon herself based upon this? And then again, what suffering might she give to another person based upon how this affects her? So there's just a lot to unpack with that. I mean, I think in a way most people suffer more in their imagination than they do in reality. Everybody wants certain things that they don't get. We have all these desires that remain unfulfilled a lot. Or even when we get things that we want, we are disappointed when they're not what we think they were, or there's just a lot of reasons to suffer. But why do we suffer? I mean, it's obviously part of our human condition. But I don't know. I mean, it's not something that you can just let go of, because you're going to be faced with it for your whole life. So it is what it is. I mean, maybe the Stoics are wise in this regard because they sort of embrace the suffering and they try to be strong and have a persistent will within the suffering. But that doesn't mean that they don't still feel it, you know? And this is kind of my problem with traditional religion, especially Christian variations, the Abrahamic variations. If there is a creator, why did he invent suffering? So if we have a benevolent God, why would it or he put us through all of this? Now, in a lot of the holy books, they would say it's kind of like the alchemical crucible that forms us into mature people and teaches us lessons, which I agree with to an extent, but there is a lot of needless suffering in the world too. I mean, life is full of suffering. I mean, even in order to nourish themselves, all forms of life have to consume another form of life, thereby giving pain, fear, death upon another. Even herbivores live by destroying the life of plants. So like, we're all destroying things and causing suffering for others. That seems like an odd world, especially if the creator was all-knowing, and if the creator was perfection, why would it create such a world with so many flaws? A world filled with tragedies, evil, bodily pain, psychological pain, socio-cultural pain, revolutions, like all these things that cause copious amounts of suffering. Even when we have pleasure or ecstasy of some kind, it often leads to pain and suffering after. If you get drunk, you have a hangover. If you fall in love, you probably have heartbreak. So like, most of it is suffering. In the Abrahamic religions, they often say that humans are to be blamed for the imperfections of the world, but I don't know if I believe that. I think that's actually giving us too much power in a way. So in the Gnostic view, there is a true, ultimate, and transcendent God who is beyond all created universes and who never created anything in the sense in which the word create is ordinarily understood. While this true God did not fashion or create anything, he or it emanated or brought forth from within himself the substance of all there is in all the worlds, visible and invisible. In a certain sense, it may therefore be true to say that all is God, for all consists of the substance of God. By the same token, it must also be recognized that many portions of the original divine essence have been projected so far from their source that they underwent unwholesome changes in the process. To worship the cosmos or nature or embodied creatures is thus tantamount to worshiping alienated and corrupt portions of the emanated divine essence. Okay, so if gnosis is the knowledge of transcendence that it's arrived by the way of an intuitive means past this, they call it the pleroma, which is the division, I guess, between the unadulterated pure God and the material world. The material world is imperfect, and it's evidenced by death and things that are happening around us that are constantly challenging the perfection of what's beyond the pleroma. Now, the Gnostics believe that the world is flawed because it was created in a flawed manner. So there's no way to get past it unless you get past the flawed parts. So the basic Gnostic myth has many variations, but all of these refer to aeons, intermediate deific beings who exist between the ultimate true God and ourselves. They, together with the true God, comprise the realm of fullness, wherein the potency of divinity operates fully. The fullness stands in contrast to our existential state, which in comparison may be called emptiness. One of the aeonal beings who bears the name Sophia, which means wisdom, is of great importance to the Gnostic worldview. In the course of her journeyings, Sophia came to emanate from her own being a flawed consciousness, a being who became the creator of the material and psychic cosmos, all of which he created in the image of his own flaw. This being, unaware of his origins, imagines himself to be the ultimate and absolute God. Since he took the already existing divine essence and fashioned it into various forms, he is also called the demiurgos, or half-maker. There is an authentic half, a true deific component within creation, but it is not recognized by the half-maker and by his cosmic minions, the archons or rulers. And so sometimes it's also called the demiurge or Yaldabaoth. And yeah, I think that the illusion that, if this is indeed true, the illusion that this creator, half-creator, God made, it's hard for us as being generated from that to see beyond our mortal selves. And that's why when we have experiences of death around us, it tends to hit us hard because we don't know what's beyond, whether it's a heaven, let's say, or in this case the other side of the pleroma, or it just ends. That's the grand question, right? So I know this in terms of my friend. I'm glad in a way that his suffering is over, because he was a person that I think suffered very hard. He struggled through life more than some do, I think. And I'm not sure if he was ever going to improve that part of himself or transcend it, let's say. So that struggling could have went on and on and on. And to me, that seems kind of like a hell. Now I worry about his daughter, whether she's going to go through a kind of hell now. But that's one way to see material existence. I think in a lot of religions, material world is like here, then you have the spiritual, like heaven, then you have hell, which is like the underworld or whatever. So there's three, but I think it's maybe better to see it in the Gnostic way, where there's just two, and the one that we're in is basically hell. uh, I mean, it feels that way sometimes. Well, another question to ask is if it exists, if the demiurge exists, does it also suffer? Because it's one step away from, removed from the whole, or God. And it also doesn't realize it, which is what I think a lot of people in our reality don't realize either, is that we're kind of separate from it. So, I mean, what happens to a consciousness that can't, by its very nature, is separate from the whole? I mean, are we all doomed to kind of like just go around and search for some kind of peace? But the irony of that is that most people don't find peace that way. Like, you know, they think, oh, another person, like I'm going to fall in love with this person and that's going to bring me peace. No, it's just going to probably bring you more suffering. Or, you know, people that want to do drugs, or maybe like sex addiction, or any of these things where they think this is going to bring them some kind of satisfaction. It's just making their life more difficult in some ways. But on the other hand, I mean, how can we go through life without some kind of pleasure? And I mean, maybe that's transcending it and getting in nirvana or something. Is that just letting go of all the pleasure? But that to me doesn't feel right either. So, I mean, I know this, like I would see him, he's a musician, so I would see him play, and I did see moments of pleasure when he would play the guitar, and I'm trying to reconcile the fact, were those little moments of pleasure, which might have been an hour here, hour there, were they worth the amount of suffering and pain that he went through the rest of his life? I don't know. I guess it's just something to think about, maybe in your own life or my life. How can we just let go of everything? Because I think you kind of have to do that in a way. So, I mean, in the case of his daughter, I know this is probably going to screw her up a lot. And I don't know, like, if there's anything that can actually stop that from happening. I just don't think there's anything. So it's quite a tragedy. But, you know, I mean, I think we go through life trying to grab onto things and trying to gain some kind of pleasure, and the pleasure often makes us cause more pain around us by trying to chase these pleasures. And I think no matter what we do, it's kind of a fool's errand, even though we all do it, and it's just part of this mortal existence. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Philip K. Dick. I talk more about the concept of the Gnostic thought in this video on Philip K. Dick's exegesis, if you want to check that out. But I'm going to leave you a quote from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You will be required to do wrong no matter where you go. It is the basic condition of life to be required to violate your own identity. At some time, every creature which lives must do so. It is the ultimate shadow, the defeat of creation, this is the curse at work, the curse that feeds on all life everywhere in the universe. So my final words on this, I guess, are that it's a shame that you can have like skills, let's say, of, you know, in his case he could play the guitar really well, or if you're like to write or do art or dance or sing or something, and it gives joy to so many people, but a lot of times it's also part of you running away from your shadow. And as a creator myself, I recognize that in him, that a lot of his troubles were caused from him trying to run away from his shadow. And it's a tragedy, but I think it's kind of what we have to do as people, maybe. We all have the burdens that we're carrying with us of things that happened in our childhood, or, you know, things that just didn't turn out right in life, and we have to carry that, like the camel, I guess. And yeah, it's not easy. So I think that's about all I got. I'm just gonna say that wherever he ended up, I hope he is at peace finally. So rest in peace.